Hello, and welcome to the online training for the 2022 season of the Audible Bats project. My name is Sarah Rose, and I will be your volunteer coordinator. Before we get started, I just want to thank you for taking the time to complete this training and to participate in our project. We try to give people different options. Previously, this project only took place in and around Central Oregon, but we have been expanding this summer. We are hoping to cover much more of Oregon and actually have even a few folks volunteering up in Washington. So online training has become quite a necessity for us, which is actually really exciting. For this project, volunteers will head out to bat-friendly locations just before sunset. Shortly after sunset, they will sit quietly and listen for 1 hour to see how many bats they can hear and hopefully figure out which species they are hearing as well. Now, we have about 15 species of bats here in Oregon, but for this project, we will be focusing on 2 of them, the pallid bat and the spotted bat. Both of these species are considered Oregon Conservation Strategy species. These are determined by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to be animals that either are close to being imperiled in Oregon or which we just don't have enough information about to really get a good grasp on them. So both of these are considered strategy species, and they are both high desert bats. So they live mostly in the eastern 2/3 of the state. And they have a few other things in common, which we'll get into in a little bit. But first, let's talk some specifics. So our first target species are spotted bats, Euderma maculatum being the Latin name. They are considered vesper bats, which means essentially that they are nocturnal. They are visually really stunning bats, as you can see here in this adorable drawing. So the first thing you might notice is the very large, somewhat pink ears. They also have pure snow white bellies, and then these kind of puppy dog-like snouts. They're really particularly adorable bats. And on the back, we can see the spots for which they get their name. They also have this long tail, which is connected to their hind legs by a piece of skin called the uropatagium, which helps them in flight and navigation. Spotted bats are, when it comes to like saying what their range is, it's kind of tricky. The maps are all very, very general, and this comes from the difficulty we have in monitoring spotted bats. We actually didn't think we had spotted bats in Oregon until the 1970s, and up until the early 2000s, we thought they were incredibly rare in the state. And we have been learning, partly through the first 2 years of this project, that there are actually a few more spotted bats around than we originally thought. Our second species that we're focusing on is the pallid bat, Antrozoa pallidus. They are, again, vesper bats. They are also pretty unique looking. While a lot of bats are darker colors, pallid bats, as the name implies, are pale. They're kind of a pink-skinned, blonde-furred bat. They also specialize in eating larger insects and invertebrates. They'll actually feed on scorpions and grasshoppers. They will swoop down and grab insects off the ground. It's their preferred method of hunting. And sometimes they'll even crawl on the ground to snag prey. They're pretty unique and impressive. And being that they like large, tough prey, they have those big, intimidating teeth inside that very smiley face. As you can see, they've got one of those little kind of pig noses. Again, we've got big ears and that very light blonde belly. Now, pallid bat range is just about as complicated as spotted bat range. You'll find conflicting maps, but if you can see the blown up map of Oregon here, this is where we expect to find pallid bats. These are the areas that have the habitat qualities that we believe they need. Pallid bats are more like our other species of bat in that they do actually echolocate in ultrasound. So we generally cannot hear their echolocation calls. And as such, our equipment has picked them up in a lot more places than it has the spotted bats. But what's interesting about pallids is that they will change the sound they make when they are in what we call maternity colonies. So pallid bat mothers will get together in a large group to give birth and raise their pups as kind of a community. And it has been found that as they are entering and exiting these maternity colonies, they're actually making these really low frequency noises that are audible to the human ear. And we believe it's a way for the bats to communicate with one another. These are called social calls. So with regards to this project, if you hear pallid bats, then we will know that you've actually found a maternity colony, which is really important information for a conservation strategy species. We like to know where they are giving birth and rearing their pups, and those are really good places for land managers to protect in the future. It's really important. So, as I've discussed, both of these bats make unique noises. So the spotted bat is echolocating at that lower frequency. And I'm going to play one of those calls for you right now. That is what it sounds like when a spotted bat flies overhead. And here is our pallid bat social call. So those are the two noises that you will be listening for as you go out and do your surveys. There's a few other things you'll need to know. So first, what do bats want? How do we find them? So when we're out surveying for bats, we are generally looking for three things. The first being still water. And this is for two reasons. First, bats drink water on the wing. So they actually fly across a body of water, swoop down, take a sip, and swoop back up. And in order to do this safely, they need flat water so they don't get taken under. They're very, very small. They also like to hunt over water bodies a lot of the time because that's where insects hang out. If you can think of sitting by a lake in the summer and the just insane number of mosquitoes, that's pretty much a bat's idea of heaven. So wetlands are another good place to find bats. Cliffs, rocky canyons, really steep rock walls are another good place. Bats love to roost in crevices along these sheer canyons. And then open spaces can also be really good places to find bats, especially the edge of a forest or a meadow full of flowers. These are great places for insects, and they're nice and open, so they're easy for bats to navigate. For this project, we will primarily be focusing on cliffs. First off, cliffs are the only place that you're going to hear pallid bats, because they're the only places that they do their social calls, because they exclusively have maternity colonies in cliff faces, usually towards the top. Cliffs are also a favorite roost site for spotted bats. So it's really convenient that these two species have such habitat overlap. So the tops of cliffs and the bottoms of cliffs are going to be the vast majority of our survey sites. There will be a few sites at still water bodies, especially in the high desert areas where we expect to find spotted bats, So there will be a few of those, but primarily we'll be looking for really, really steep cliff faces for this project. So 2 examples, as I already mentioned, Smith Rock is a great one. You can hear spotted bats around the park all summer. And then the other photo here is in the Clarno area, which is further out east. But if you think of like Peterskeen Ogden Bridge and Lake Billy Chinook and Fort Rock, these are the kinds of places where you'll be looking and listening for bats. And your participation in this project is going to be broken down into kind of 3 sections. The first is training, which you're doing right now. Then you're going to go through and select where you want to do your surveys. There's going to be 2 options for how to select your sites. I have an interactive map set up for you, and you can go through and look at different areas. The individual sites have information on driving and hiking difficulties. We have everything from, driving just on pavement to having to go 15 miles down a rocky road. We have sites that require no hiking whatsoever and some that require like backpacking. So you'll have a lot of information to decide where you want to go do your surveys. The other option is if you know of an excellent cliff site and it's not already listed on our map, you can just go do surveys there. We are trying to expand, and I do not necessarily have time to scan every square mile of Oregon for good cliff faces. So if you know of one and it has public access, we would be just ecstatic if you would go survey that. And then we'll have that location information for next year, and we can send other folks, or you can go back out for us. And then the third part of the process is, of course, the data collection. And this is structured so that you'll go out before sunset. You want to get to your site in the light, and then you'll wait for what we call the end of civil twilight. And there'll be a resource for you to find that. It changes over the course of the summer and depending on your location. And then you just sit and listen for 1 hour. And we have an app that you will use to record every time that you hear a bat. And it's pretty straightforward. This is our little walkthrough on that. It's fairly straightforward. We do have a few hundred sites, so it can seem kind of daunting. But there's a lot of really helpful information. I have a layer on the map to show you where the public lands are, so you can make sure you're not accidentally going onto private land. You can change the base map to show you streets or topography or whatever you need to help you get there. So once you have started perusing, what you're going to do is click on this icon right here. That is the sign up icon, and it's going to give you this error message. We can't seem to make that go away, but you can ignore it. It's going to stay there. You can't X out of it. But once you've clicked on your edit icon, you go ahead and select your survey location. And this little pop-up is going to show up. It's going to show you the name of the site, the detection target. Again, that'll usually be a cliff top or a cliff bottom. Who owns the land, the coordinates for it. And then if you scroll down, it's going to give that driving difficulty level, the hiking difficulty, and then the bottom is where you sign up for your surveys. Now, ideally, once you've selected a site, you'll commit to surveying that site once a month for the rest of the summer. However, we know that some of these sites are really remote, and maybe you're just going on a family camping trip and a certain site is convenient for you, but you're not going to be able to get back there. That is totally okay. Sign up for what you can, and if you can't do every month, that is fine. Hopefully someone else will step in, and if not, that's okay too. We're really trying to be very flexible and make this as easy on our volunteers as possible, and any effort you can put in for us is greatly appreciated. So you'll just type in your name for each month at that given site that you're going to survey, and then it's done. And if you would like, after you've done your survey, if you notice that the driving difficulty or the hiking difficulty was inaccurate, you do have access to go ahead and change those, which would really help out future volunteers. So please feel free to do that. All right. So we've trained, we've selected our site, we've navigated to it. It's now time to listen. We are going to be recording our data, like I mentioned, in that app called SitSci. So this is what my homepage looks like. I've got 2 projects that I'm a part of. So once I log in, I go ahead and select Add Data, and that'll take you to this screen right here. This is pretty basic. You're just putting in the date, the time, your name. You're going to use the Use Current Location button, and that'll automatically put in your coordinates. And then that'll take you to the Data tab. So you're going to put in the location name as it showed up on the sign up map. And then for observer names, you're going to put any trained volunteers who are conducting the survey that evening. So say you and your buddy both are trained volunteers and you're going to go listen together, you put both of your names. But if you're a trained volunteer and you wanted to bring your mom along and she has no idea what a spotted bat sounds like, you don't need to put her name down. You're going to put your start time, which was end of civil twilight, and then your end time is going to be 1 hour later. And then you're going to put your detection target, and then you'll scroll down and that'll take you to the species section. So you'll have a little drop down. You select the species of bat that you hear. Again, you'll only hear pallid bats if you are by cliffs, and you'll hear spotted bats in a greater variety of locations. And if you're not sure which bat you're hearing, you can go ahead and make a note about that in the notes section. You select your species, and then you're going to input the number of individuals. The vast majority of the time, the number of individuals is going to be 1. The only time I want you to put 2 or more is if you can very simultaneously and very distinctly hear 2 individuals on opposite sides of you. Bats can fly pretty fast and it can seem like there's a bunch of them, especially if they fly in circles. So unless you're hearing them simultaneously in different directions, just go ahead and put 1. And then you'll go ahead and put the observation time. So the time that you first started hearing the bat. Once you've input your first observation, you go ahead and click on this plus, and that will create another field in which to put your next observation. And here we select spotted bat. We have 1 individual and we put the time. This is what a typical observation will look like. You'll probably be hearing more spotted bats than pallid bats. Because they're always echolocating at that low frequency, they're a little bit easier to find this way. Once you are done with your survey for the night, you're going to go ahead and scroll to the very bottom and click Save. And that will take you to this screen. So at this point, you're going to want to tap Go to Upload, and it will take you to this page here. And if you have cell service at this point, you can go ahead and click the little upload button. If not, no problem. Just try to remember to do it later on when you get home. Just go ahead and upload that data sheet. And once you do, you're going to hit yes, submit it. And once you do that, I'll be able to see that data. And if I notice that you've signed up for some surveys and haven't submitted your data, I can always go ahead and remind you to do that. So not a ton of pressure there. I'll be keeping an eye on things. Before I finish up, there's one really important thing that I want to mention. And it's one of the lessons that's really hard for anyone in the wildlife or natural resources field to learn, but it's also really important. And that is that not finding your target species is just as important as finding it. So if you're hearing things and it doesn't seem like they're actually the bats that you're looking for, but you really wanted to find some, um, it's okay to just leave that as zero. You can finish a survey and not have heard anything, and that's really important data for us to have. So don't feel bad about it. Don't feel like you're failing or like you're not trying hard enough. We need to know where the bats aren't just as much as we need to know where they are. So just please keep that in mind as you go through your surveys. And again, just thank you all so much. We at the Bat Hub cannot tell you how much we appreciate all the effort that our volunteers have put in for us in the past and how much we know they're going to do this season and hopefully in seasons to come. This is incredibly important information for all of the wildlife and land managers in Oregon. And so we all really, really appreciate you guys. And with that, we're going to wrap up with a few more bat calls. So do you know which species that was? That was the pallid bat. That was a pallid bat social call. And there were a few different kind of sounds in there. You can rewatch these. I'll have more videos available on the YouTube channel as well. So you can familiarize yourselves a little more. But again, those pallid bats are a little like kind of chirpier. There's another pallid bat. Here is a spotted bat call. Here is another spotted bat call for you. Notice that it is a little clickier as opposed to chirpy like the pallid bat call. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions whatsoever, or if you just want to chat bats.